Developments on the Russia-Ukraine crisis, on the distraction that is plaguing us at present, is the transition from the previous long-term crisis to which we cannot speak of, for fear of censorious reprisal. Comment from another. This was posted in one of my Telegram groups. Do any of you have any insights? CRP just posted this. Quote, "No war is coming. It is a complete fabrication. It is Washington cynically using the mainstream media to ratchet up American hysteria, a literal, quote, wag the dog, unquote, psyop, to distract from the colossal problems in the US. When, quote, Russian troop movements, unquote, talks started in November, people who know started pointing out that, number one, the troops were closer to Belarus than to Ukraine, and number two, the troops were actually in their regular bases and not deployed as if preparing for war. As the US economy deteriorated and inflation became too big to ignore, in the UK this is a similar event. We're at 5.5% official inflation figures. Real inflation will probably triple that. Continuing on, there was more talk of the Russian invasion of Ukraine after this inflation and economic deterioration, that is. Putin took advantage of this, of course. The judomaster that he is. He used this non-crisis to put pressure on the Europeans and make them split from the Americans, because European and American interests diverge significantly insofar as their relationship to Russia is concerned. It is extremely cheap for Russia to have its soldiers marching around in their own bases and deploy medical gear right outside their barracks, and then watch as the Americans freak out about it, further driving a wedge between the US and Europe. Fast forwarding to the last part of that post, quote, "How do I know that the leadership in the West does not actually believe any war is imminent? Very simple. The German Chancellor and the French President, Scholz and Macron, are visiting Kiev and Moscow, and the Americans have openly said that they will not disconnect Russia from SWIFT. If they truly thought that a war was about to break out, they would be acting very, very differently. And Russia would have been disconnected from SWIFT, the payment system, quite some time ago. How do I know that the people of Ukraine do not believe that war is imminent? Simple. The exchange rate. It hasn't really moved. In 2014-2015, the hryvnia, the Ukrainian currency, dropped precipitously, greater than 50%, on 3 separate occasions. But so far, throughout this entire crisis, the hryvnia has dropped in the single-digit percentage points. Another clue, nobody is leaving Kharkiv, the region on the east, closest to Russia, not by plane and not by car. Last week I flew out to Kiev. The plane was at about 75% capacity, 2/3 business people, another clue. And the same thing was going on there. Nobody was preparing for war, not even in the slightest. Do keep in mind, roughly half the population of Ukraine is ethnically Russian, and a great many of them have close ties to family in Mother Russia. Kharkiv is a Russian city, and that's a fact. So with all these strong ties, if word was coming that an actual war was imminent, people would be a lot more nervous, and they wouldn't be placidly going about their day as if nothing's going on, because nothing is going on, unquote. My response, listen to this. I have been digging into this more and more, and it seems as though the entire thing seems to be centred around the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and Russia's erosion of the US puppets in Europe by the fact of making them entirely reliant on Russian gas. Geopolitically, on the face of it, this puts the US in a rather precarious position, with the rest of the issues plaguing their crumbling hegemony of the planet, and thus they sought to detach the Russian influence from Europe by enacting this charade. Here is one of the main reasons the US sought to agitate this and, by extension, weaken the Russian gas exportation to Europe, which hurts us economically via extremely high fuel and energy costs, even more so than we have now, or are expecting. We're talking about rolling blackouts, probably the whole 9 yards. This is the reason from an individual I was talking to from the US. Listen closely. Quote, The US has a surplus of LNG, or liquefied natural gas, and wants to export it worldwide, but it is rather expensive. They built vast storage tanks in Spain for it to be shipped across to Europe, but because of the cost it was a non-starter in the EU, and the EU naturally were still reliant on Russian gas because it is cheap and easily accessible. I always thought this was the real reason behind this standoff. This is all in reply to Biden announcing that the US will stop Nord Stream 2 in the event of further Russian aggression, quote quote, which funnily enough does not hurt the Russians but the Europeans, and Russia will merely seek buyers of that gas in the east, potentially China, of which this decision to stop Nord Stream 2 would benefit exclusively. The CIA, USA, have been agitating behind the scenes in Ukraine for years. This whole thing could be resolved if Ukraine is made a non-member of NATO. I would think then the problem would go away, unquote.